everybody. I published this yesterday and shared it everywhere because in case they took it down off the net or tried to make any alterations to it. And UK Column, hats off to them, has published it with the big question mark because the government are now claiming that this document was updated, and as UK Column rightly questions, but without indication this has happened, is this sloppy promulgation of information by PHE or a dangerous path to confusion and deceiving the public? And I do recommend people turn to UK Column for news, specifically on this COVID-19 situation, because they are giving valid information and facts about the statistics of deaths and the way all deaths related to coronavirus are being treated as COVID-19, and the way everybody's talking about coronavirus. So it looks like a narrative has been set, and that's what I'm going to explore here. So I will be covering old ground that I've done in a previous video, but hopefully putting them all together in this much shorter video, because I think that we need to make these connections, and I'm making different points now. So okay then, let's imagine they're saying that they've updated this document. So lawfully I am questioning that on grounds of my human rights and my right to legitimately present or notice valid evidence, because the law requires me to be alert and aware, not to be ignorant, in relation to the golden rule of law and the absurdity of a bill that actually threatens to cause more damage and more loss of life than what the bill is designed, the lives the bill is allegedly designed to save. So that makes an absurdity of the law, and the golden rule exists to present absurdities to the law, and the golden rule fundamentally applies to public policy, and human rights are a foundation of public policy still in Britain. And I am still a citizen of the EU as yet. We have not fully left the EU, so I have human rights according to the EU. And this is not a criticism of the government or government policy. These are legitimate, valid questions in relation to legitimate, lawfully and officially established facts of evidence and other evidence which is from equally trustworthy sources. Okay, so now I'm going to explore this idea that this document has been updated without any indication that this has happened. I'm being asked to believe that our civil service is that incompetent. Okay, so my first port of call is to the URL up here. Okay, look, March 2015 final PDF. That's on the URL. And in here we do find Crown Copyright 2015, and we do find COVID-19 is listed SARS-CoV-2. There it is. Okay? That's what SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 are basically the same thing. Okay? So then I decided, which I did yesterday, tried to look for the 2016 one and I couldn't find it. And so today I did further research and I found this document, which is from 2017, but it's the second edition, you see, because it's been updated, and it was updated from the 2016 edition. That's why there is no 2016 edition. This is a much later document, 2016. Okay? But it was updated in 2017, and that's why it says second edition, and it's got a new copyright. Crown copyright is now 2017. So if this document had been updated in 2020, it would have to say on it 2020 second edition 2020, not just let's just stick in COVID-19 in there. So then I'm thinking, well, why did they? go back and update this document in 2017? Why did they change the original 2016 document? Was it because they wanted to remove COVID-19 from the list of notifiable diseases here? Because here we go, official list of notifiable reportable diseases, and remember this is for prisons and detention centres, and we can see it was originally for prisons and detention centres 2016. Did they go back into this to remove COVID-19? Because there was a plan from 2017 onwards to have this whole pandemic and to orchestrate the inevitable banking collapse, to orchestrate it to happen at this time, so that they can engineer a situation by which, under guise of a pandemic, get everybody into a lockdown while the banking crash happens, blame it on the pandemic, prohibit people from protesting, because we've all got to keep 6 feet apart and we're not allowed to gather in more than 5 people, so they don't get Occupy on steroids in response to the banking collapse had it just happened without any pandemic. And don't forget the bailouts that they're hoping to give themselves now make the bailouts of 2008 look like small change. So, you know, these are very legitimate questions, and we are a public of millions of people. And so we in Britain, you know, we do need to question when we're being presented evidence of what looks like fraud then. Because it's a very serious matter if government documents can be just changed online willy-nilly. You know, we're talking about, you know, this is Crown copyright. If you buy a book of fiction and it's been re-edited, and then, so that's the second edition, that's second edition re-edited. Second edition. You see? So if that's the law for a book of fiction, do not tell me that that is not, that, you know, the law for official government documents can be ignored. And as I say, I don't believe that our civil service is that incompetent and ignorant of the law. And as I say, final PDF, as it says there, March 2015, final PDF. And we see that there is no final PDF on this one because it was re-edited in 2017. So now if I go to the coronavirus bill, which I've done before, and I'm showing you the inquest again, because, you know, I call this DNA. COVID-19 is not a notifiable disease. Now, to me, that's the reason why I call this DNA, is because I now suspect that this was written before COVID-19 was actually made a notifiable disease. Okay? COVID-19 adds COVID-19 to the list of diseases, SARS-CoV to the list of notifiable causative agents. And this change in law requires GPs to report all cases of COVID-19 to Public Health England. The change was made by adding them to Health Protection Regulations 2010. And the reason why it only applies to GPs, because it appears that it already applied to prisons from 2015. You see? This is just for the public. Because these other lists were only for prisons. It didn't go to all GPs. So now when we go there, so, you know, I call that the fingerprint, I call that the DNA, and again, you know, we went down to this section here where basically they're talking about employers having to record any employees who take time off work and get statutory sick pay, because in relation to coronavirus, as it says here, to keep records in relation to payments of statutory sick pay in respect of incapacity for work related to coronavirus. And we can see they've actually tried to change the meaning of the word coronavirus here to exclusively refer to severe acute respiratory syndrome. And I call this the fingerprint because obviously whoever's written this has picked up from this, where it was listed COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2, and that this is evidence that the government is trying to change legal medical terminology to mean something totally different, because that's a lie. As I've explained previously, coronavirus applies to all common colds. All strains of common cold and flu viruses are coronavirus, and that's why this bill, I believe, is unlawful, or at least fraudulent, because they're trying to claim that coronavirus now actually means COVID-19. And the BBC are reporting cases of coronavirus to mean COVID-19, when that is not the case. So that a fraud is happening here. Because, I'm sorry, coronavirus is not COVID-19 necessarily, okay? COVID-19 is a specific strain of coronavirus. And this is what we mean about the law and the wording of the law and the letter of the law and the golden rule, and how once you start messing about with words and misinterpreting them in order to give powers, and we'll go into the powers in a bit. So I call this the fingerprint, you see. This is a fingerprint that there's a fraudulent intent going on here. There's a deception happening here, because, and also perjury, because this is a lie. Coronavirus does not mean acute severe respiratory syndrome. Coronavirus means any strain of flu or colds. Okay, and this is the CCTV footage. This is the CCTV footage. Okay, so what the government is claiming is that, oh yes, the CCTV footage, it is from 2015, but actually we went back in and included a scene in it from 2020. And that itself is unlawful. So, you know, now if this, as I suspect, this document is genuine, and this was in COVID, was included in 2015, and perhaps they forgot about this document, perhaps they didn't realise it was still online. Perhaps they didn't realise that a historical search would pull it up, because that kind of things happen. Okay, perhaps they thought they were covered because they took it out of the 2016 document, you know. And as with all suspected crime and criminals, they do make mistakes. You see, I don't believe that the legitimate civil service makes mistakes, but people who are manipulating civil servants to do what actually amount to unlawful things, like changing Crown copyright documents without even stating that, then yes, we do, you know, that they are capable, aren't they, of actually removing this, because they decided, oh well, actually let's have the pandemic on COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, severe acute respiratory syndrome, and we'll change the meaning of that word. Well, we'll claim that COVID-19 actually means coronavirus, that coronavirus actually means COVID-19. Or SARS-CoV-2, because they're one and the same thing, you see. So this is very, very, very serious. These are very serious anomalies. And in order for people to understand exactly the severity of it and why I have taken so much time now to question this, and yes, I am putting my own life and safety on the line here, but you know, we're talking about our children's future right in, you know, look, please read this document again. You know, we've got the Bernican here, the Bernician, a highly respected guy, has devoted his life to standing up for people. he knows the law like nobody's business. He has devoted his life to protecting British citizens' homes. Okay? And using the law, like actually in court, to defend people from eviction by these, repossession, unlawful actions really of banks, fraudulent actions of banks. So, when he explains here the law in layman's terms, he understands it, because we the public, we understand the law in layman's terms, don't we? We don't say, oh, I've got to satisfy the requirements of the Road Traffic Safety Act 19 whatever and under section 5 1AB, do we? And go and get my MOT. We just know that we have to get an MOT and we need that certificate to prove our car is roadworthy. We know what the actions are. We know if we get caught for stealing, there's we probably end up in prison, or maybe we might get a fine or something, depending on the severity of the crime. We understand, that's the layman's term of understanding the law. And what he explains here is what this bill threatens. And when you look at it, it does actually put people more at risk than the pandemic. It is very, very, very serious. And, these emergency powers will last up to 2 years with reviews every 6 months and the unrestricted option to extend indefinitely. And, this is a House of Commons bill that, as far as I'm aware, has been passed in a parliament in a parliament that's shut down. It's not been through the House of Lords. It's had no scrutiny. Now, if this document is correct, then basically, what we're looking at is an abuse of power, aren't we? An exploit an orchestrated event that has been in progress for 2 years. 2 years in the planning. Things like the NHS is indemnified. The health service has been indemnified should they fail for whatever reason to provide care for people who need it, or if they administer forced treatment and the patient dies as a result. So basically the health service can be transformed into something that kills people. It's protections from forced detainment and cruel and unnecessary treatment under the Mental Health Act have been relaxed indefinitely. These are very serious risks. And so, if there's a conspiracy, who is behind this then? Because if this was already identified in 2015, and then we're being told it's a new thing, so then we've been lied to, okay? And then we have to ask ourselves, well, what is really going on here? Who is this a conspiracy? And then we look at this from Christine Lagarde memo for Your Eyes Only from the Coalition. Christine Lagarde, Director of the International Monetary Fund. This was a leaked memo for Your Eyes Only from the Coalition. It was titled, "Old People Live Too Long and This is a Risk for the Global Economy. We Must Do Something Urgently." And you go through this, you read it all, and basically it's saying, talking about how to manipulate the public into viewing old people as a burden and a drain on our resources, and how to lower expectations of the kind of life that people will be leading, to lower the expectations of young people as to what standard of living they can expect when they get old. Okay? To encourage suicide, even to use the press to manipulate public opinion. It's all discussed in here. Even using the press to play devil's advocate. So they appear to, they'll produce an article that appears to be compassionate towards the elderly, but just by the very nature and the way that's presented, they will inspire the very opposite opinion in the readership. And just really to sum the article up, so-called deaths of despair among older men have become common. Old women, despite fearing becoming burdens to their children, hang on. In response, the consortium suggests that age shaming, to which older women seem more easily prone, may be the simplest means by which to achieve ... And there's Christine Lagarde with her fingers looking like a gun pointing to her head, referring to what? Suicide. Here the rest of the text ends, apparently having been ripped off. And this was sent in by Morgan Rose Gillette in 2018. It was found in the waste paper basket. A secret memo was discovered in the waste basket of a high-ranking staffer in the European Commission. It was sent to us by Dr. Morgan Roth Gillette. And here she is again. So it was published in 2018. This document was discussed at Davos for the coalition, for Your Eyes Only from the coalition. It was discussed at Davos either 2016 or 2017. Probably 2016, because by the time it's reached Margaret and by the time she's checked it all that it isn't a hoax, okay, and actually put a name to it for a publication, then maybe it was 2016 Davos. So according to this, it is all about getting rid of old people, basically, culling the population of old people, even driving them to suicide, as was explained at the end there. And now we're looking at a health service that's telling people over 60 they aren't likely to receive life-saving treatment, or people with serious underlying health issues, or severely disabled people, that they're low priority when it comes to life-saving treatment, you see? So we're seeing something being realised here, and all about, what? Protecting the global economy. So then we have to ask ourselves, well, who is Margaret M. Gillette? Is she the kind of person that will, just blithely put a name to the publication of a hoax? Well, no, she isn't actually. Margaret M. Gillette tells you all about her here. Okay? Ending Ageism or How Not to Shoot Old People, Gillette's most recent book was featured in the New Yorker in November 2017 and won the 2018 American Psychological Association Division 35 Florence L. Denmark Prize for contributions to women in ageing that promote social justice. A review of Ending Ageism in Tikkun calls anti-ageism the next big social movement. She has published other prize-winning books about the cultural context of age, and her essays have appeared in New Political Science, Nation, Dissent, Miss American Prospect. One essay won the Danielle Singer Millennial Award. Her essays are often cited as notable in Best American Essays. She's resident scholar at Women's Studies Research Centre, Bandius University. So I trust this lady, as indeed, as I've said, I trust the Bernician. I trust this lady. She's a very highly renowned professional. She knows what she's talking about. I do not believe for 1 minute that she would put her name to a fake document or a hoax. She will have researched this thoroughly before she put a name for it to be published widely. And it was first published in Spanish. I mean, this is translated from the Spanish. So, was there a plot at Davos for all this to happen? And then, so they decide, well, how are we going to do it? Well, we'll use COVID-19. And so they immediately update the prison thing of 2016. Perhaps think they've removed this one completely off the net. And now it's been found. They're saying, oh, we just updated it. And what are they going to say? What are they going to say about this? Where it's two lies I've picked out, because at the very least, the fingerprint and what I call the DNA are both lies. Coronavirus does not mean SARS, Cove 2, okay? And in the inquest bit, actually coronavirus is listed. Sorry, COVID-19 is listed as a notifiable disease. So this was obviously written before then. So we're dealing with a very, very, very dodgy situation here, aren't we? We're dealing with, are we dealing with a coalition production? Is that what we're living for reality now? The millions of people in Britain all locked in their homes on the strength of a pandemic, that a virus that's been around since 2015. So then we're looking at an abuse of power, exploitation of a pandemic, for a government then to just abuse their powers to such a degree that they would produce this bill that itself contains statements that are outright lies. And under such an ambiguous heavy as coronavirus bill, which, again, basically criminalising even people with the common cold, claiming they become carted off to a treatment centre, held in isolation, no access to family, no access to a lawyer, anything, and die and be cremated. Even the hospital itself's treatments can kill them. I mean, they're going to start experimenting on people. The risks here are immense. And I ask the Supreme Court and every legal professional in Britain now to stand up and ask questions about this, because it is so deadly serious, and it is, you know, an abuse of power if this is correct. And the suspicions are too immense, because we're talking about this indefinitely. And in such a situation, every citizen has a right to stand up and ask questions. You know, like Jesus said, be like a little child. And how can adults be like a little child? What do children do? They ask questions without fear. And questions are not a criticism. So I am asking questions, because what I have presented here is legitimate evidence. And, you know, perhaps the government say, well, you know, we were just behaving hurriedly. What, hurriedly? Hurriedly, in a space of a few weeks, from a government that up until the beginning of March, end of February, was saying there was no pandemic, there was nothing to fear. And then suddenly, within a few weeks, we've got this. And if this is true, like I say, was Parliament then unlawfully prorogued on the strength of actually a fake pandemic? Because we're not dealing with a new virus. It's been around since 2015. So therefore Parliament has been unlawfully prorogued in order to pass through this bill that strips us of all our human rights and actually puts the public at greater risk. Because even no inquest into any suspicious deaths will be held until further notice. So basically we could be murdered in our homes and there'd be no inquest. And you're telling me that that is putting the public at greater risk than the law is meant to be protecting us from. You know, this is the kind of law you'd expect for the bubonic plague, but even not that. We've still got human rights. They are using this, exploiting this situation, an abuse of power to deny our human rights, and then threatening martial law. Under martial law, we still have human rights, but it looks like they want to bring martial law in and we'll have no human rights. And that itself is another threat. And creating an absurdity of this whole thing, that basically a soldier could come in and just shoot whoever and no buy or leave to anybody. Oh yeah, you know, they had corona. You know, basically, it's... Gosh, I couldn't even imagine China having this. That the British people have been persuaded by this media, the power of the media, persuaded people, yeah, let's be like China. Since when did this country want to be like China? Which, oh, it's got a brilliant record of human rights, hasn't it? You know, how far down the path do people go before they wake up. So I want every MP to be asking questions. I think there needs to be some serious questions asked and some serious actions taken. So thank you for taking time to listen, people. Love and God bless to all. And as I say, take strength. We need unity. But be like a little child. Ask questions.